good election without electoral reforms?
So I must emphasize, dealing specifically with the last part of your question, I'll come to the earlier part shortly. Voting is a constitutional imperative. Nobody has the right to take the right to vote away from any citizen. Citizens deserve to choose their leaders. They have the right to choose who represents them in council, in parliament, and at presidential level. It's citizens who choose. And that's why the will of the people is a sacrosanct principle of any constitutional democracy. And so nobody, ZANU-PF cannot take away people's right to vote. Coming specifically now to SADC and the AU. Now obviously we have sharpened our approach significantly since the 2018 election. We took very important lessons, and even with these by-elections. And so this has informed our engagement with the international community, particularly regional bodies, around the electoral processes that's going to take place in Zimbabwe. You'll note that there's been a shift in approach by the region when it comes to elections. We saw the work that SADC did in Zambia, the work that they did in Malawi, the work that they continue to do in other jurisdictions. And so we're ensuring that we have a dossier of information that we give to them so that they're prepared and know from the get-go what's taking place in Zimbabwe. And all these facts are objectively verifiable. It's no secret. The torture that's taking place, the weaponization of the legal system, the court system, the abuse by ZANU-PF of the police service, all these things are being placed on record so that we ensure that there's no disputed election come 2023. Now, this is not just urgent domestically, it's also urgent for other regional actors, other countries. The forced migration crisis in Zimbabwe started to create domestic crises in other jurisdictions, call it South Africa, call it Botswana, call it Zambia, wherever it is. So many of our citizens, and I think the data tells us beyond 2 million, are forced to migrate because of the governance crisis, because of the economic crisis, because of the failure by ZANU-PF to rule us competently and constitutionally. And so they can see that the pressure is upon them as well. It's in everybody's interest that there's no disputed election in 2023. And so we really are focused on that as we engage our regional bodies. Thank you. Yes, sir?
Desmond Mnemo for Zimlight. My question is, prior to the elections, you've noted a number of concerns, worrying concerns about ZEC issues, especially in ZEC. We know reportedly there are relatives of ZANU-PF members, the Mahere and stuff. Are you going into elections? Are you going to participate in the elections despite those election irregularities and voter apathy? We are talking about a lack of level playing field. Are you really going into elections, trusting those issues are still at hand? And that has been happening for over the election period for the past years. So what's your take on that? Are you still going to participate, or are there any measures are you going to take to counter a flawed election?
Thank you so much, Desmond. Now, it's in everybody's interest, every single citizen, and this goes across the board, all political parties, even those who say they're just, citizens and they don't align with anyone, and even international actors, including SADC countries and countries within the AU, to ensure that there's no disputed election in 2023. The crisis, as I've indicated, will spill over and affect everybody if we don't have a free and fair election. And so there has to be a national consensus, and one of the things maybe that the Elections Directorate didn't mention is that we are in the process of drafting, in fact it's in its finalization stage, a pre-election pact. There has to be a consensus amongst all citizens, all political actors around what will constitute a free and fair election. And in this regard, we don't want to focus on personalities, we want to focus on the process. What is the process that's being used to come up with a ZEC commissioner? Is it a credible process? Is this a transparent process? Does it meet the competency test? Does it meet the independence test? Does it meet the integrity test? All of those things are important, and they have to be agreed prior to the election in 2023. If there's failure to agree, the outcome will be a disputed election, which doesn't work in anybody's favor. Like I've emphasized, nobody can take away the right to vote from a citizen, which is why it's the number one agenda item in our electoral reform agenda. The right to vote is constitutionally enshrined. It's set out in Section 67, and in Section 155 of the Constitution, the law is very clear that the only two qualifiers for a citizen to be able to vote is that obviously they're a citizen of Zimbabwe and that they're above 18. Their location should not matter. That they may be a convict should not matter. So it doesn't matter if someone is in the diaspora, if someone is in prison, they should be allowed to vote. And it should not be an impediment that someone cannot access an ID card. And one of the things that's contained in our dossier to ZEC is this clear urban vote suppression approach by ZEC. When it suits ZANU-PF, you see ZEC working night and day to ensure citizens are registered in areas which they believe they're strong, for example, rural areas and certain communities they think that are ZANU-PF strongholds. And yet you come to Harare, you go to Bulawayo, there's a lackluster approach, even when we've decidedly mobilized hundreds of citizens, young people to go and vote, they get there. When they see there's a long queue, they say, oh no, machine wafa. You get there, they're told, no, Magetsi Ayenda. Here in town in Cecil House, you'll be shocked at how many days of the week the ZEC office is simply not working. That won't cut it as we approach 2023, and we're going to use all tools available to us. Peaceful, of course, constitutional, of course, to ensure that people's right to vote is respected. No further questions? Don't want to shut anyone out. But on that note, like I said, I cannot beg young people enough. We have to go and register to vote. You know, the Zimbabwe that we're going to see in the next 5 years and the next 10 years depends on this voting decision that we have to make now. And this is not a struggle that we can outsource to anybody. And it's not about blaming anyone, but it's about our collective future. So we implore parents, pastors, teachers, work professionals, mentors, please, let's speak to our young. Let's encourage them to vote. Let's reinforce the message that voting works. Trust me, it does. It makes all the difference. But even beyond that, we have to participate to ensure that we're part of the change we want to see. Don't sit back and outsource your struggle to Ellen or Ian. Make sure you get involved. Like I said, we're just about to roll out a wide-ranging volunteer program, so there'll be space for everybody to get involved, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a creative, whether you're a doctor, whether you're an accountant, acting for change, whether you're an artist, a musician. There's space for everyone. Let's make this the biggest election. The first is that there be full implementation of the right to vote. The second is the demand for a credible voters' roll. The third is a credible and real-time results management system. The fourth is the demand for integrity from ZEC, their processes, their personnel, and the polling material that's procured. The fifth is the demand for access to state media reform, and political freedoms. The sixth is the demand for security of the vote. And then the last demand is around the security of the voter. It's no secret that as we approach 2023, the electoral playing field has been nothing but free and fair. A number of our leaders are currently jailed without trial in the country's maximum security prison. We're all aware of what's taking place to two of our legislators, Honorable Job Sikala and Honorable Godfrey Sitole, as well as about 13 members from Nyatsime. It's clear that the regime is in panic mode. They're afraid of the citizens. They know that they cannot win a free and fair election, which is why they continue to persecute our members. Now, without further ado, I'm going to defer proceedings to Mr. Ian Makone, Councillor Ian Makone, who's going to speak a little bit about the electoral landscape, especially the reform agenda which we've been championing, and then we'll take a few questions from you. Thank you.